Good morning, afternoon, or good evening, folks. I'm your host and guide, Chris Roberts. I'm going to take you on a tour of the underground to help you prepare for what's really out there. Whether you're on the front lines battling the latest threats or leading the overall defensive strategy within your organization, my focus is to help you uncover the best ways, means, and methods to effectively and efficiently use actual threat intelligence within your company, providing you with more insights and practical ways to identify threats and reduce risks before they become incidents. Ready to dive in? All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode, and I look forward to having a good conversation on this one. I am honored, actually, in this case, to be joined, obviously, by Danny Wolf, who is making sure that Kevin and I stay somewhat on track on this one. And I'm honored to be joined by Keven Hendricks, an amazing individual with a crazy wealth and depth of information in a lot of the topics that we've been talking about and we're going to continue to talk about on this channel. So with that, I'm going to shut up for a second and I'm going to let Kevin introduce himself and give some background if he doesn't mind.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that wonderful preamble. So Keven Hendricks, I'm currently active law enforcement. In my 15-year career, I've had the pleasure of serving with two of the alphabet agencies that we know very well: internet crimes against children for 4 years, and then cyber crimes with what we colloquially known as the dark web. I'm recognized as a subject matter expert with dark web investigations, and I teach with two separate training companies about how law enforcement on a state, local, as well as a federal level can best investigate cases that have a nexus to the dark web, whether that's dark web source narcotics, whether that's fraud, or, even deeper down the rabbit hole than that. I really get a passion out of not only teaching to law enforcement, but I also run the website, the ubivisproject.org, also stopdarkwebdrugs.com, where it's kind of a proactive effort for both general public and law enforcement to report cases that have a nexus to the dark web, specifically with overdoses, to get these monikers really on blast and for there to be a united front investigating and eventually arresting these people that think they could hide behind the dark web and peddle poison to our communities.
I think it's what's interesting there is a couple of bunch of things I want to pull out of that. One, it's to coordinate. There's a huge, there have been for years, a huge effort, but it hasn't been as well coordinated as it needed to be. And it's frustrating. And we see it on the tech side of it, where we've got a lot of individuals started off going and saying, hey, this is wrong. What can we do about it? And started off with individual efforts. Obviously, law enforcement's had their things as well. And it's like, how do we collaborate and cooperate more effectively together? So it's fantastic to see that. Here's a question for you, if you don't mind. We all talk about the dark net. We all talk about the dark web. We all talk about this stuff. When you're talking to LE and government and the companies and organizations you do, how do you describe it, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I try to explain that, what we know as the dark web, the pop culture aspect of it, it's wrong.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many people don't realize that the dark web is basically the regular internet where you just need specific software to access these networks. Some people that come from a military background, obviously they know that there are other networks out there that you cannot access unless you're on that network, versus the dark web, which runs on the normal network, the regular internet we log on to every day. It just requires specific software browsers to access. So for some people that don't have the even baseline understanding of that, it blows their mind. And I could speak from the teaching aspect how much of a disconnect there is with law enforcement on the state and local level when it comes to understanding these cases. We still have these conceptions about the dark web being like the Silk Road in 2013. The technology that has advanced since then to assist law enforcement in these cases is tenfold. So the first thing we need to understand collectively to be a united front is the main players in the game are the local PDs. They're the ones that are going to be responding to calls, whether it's overdose or something involving, a parent call saying, hey, my kid ordered drugs from the internet, talking to those kids, really getting that information cultivated on that level. And then from there to be able to disseminate it to the federal partners, because, it is probably a 1 in a billion chance that a PD is going to have a vendor sitting in their town selling to someone in their town via the dark web. It's not
Right.
impossible, but it's
It's
likely
not
never going to.
probable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something that, that's something that I get incredible joy from when I teach to these state and local members of law enforcement about how much they can do, empowering them, and really breaking the veil of misinformation about the dark web.
Yeah, I think I mean, that's part of the logic for doing the series that we're doing is exactly that.
Yeah.
I don't need it to be this woo-woo mystery. I need it to be, hey, you got two servers in front of you. One you can get to via good old regular port 80, port 443, HTTP, clicking on this one, and this one you can get to as well. And here's the browser that you need to get to, or here's the, peer-to-peer network that you need to get to it. And there's your two servers. And it's
Yeah.
trying to break that down. And it's the same thing with, if you talk about a storefront, here's your store, here's your Amazon storefront, here's your drug storefront. This one you can actually get to via HTTP, and this one, here's your bit of software that you can get to it. Trying to make it as simple and as effective as possible. So it's the same thing with the hooded thing, with this whole, I am a hacker. I mean, that's my life. This is what I do for a living. And I hate the whole hooded thing. I hate when we, as an industry, try to make something mysterious. I'm like, no,
Mm.
we don't need that anymore. It needs to be this, put a freaking face to the crime, put a face to the people, put a face to the name, stop hiding it behind all this mystery rubbish. The easier and
I
sooner, in fact, we can drag it into the equity. Yeah.
I agree with that statement 100%, and that's one of the things I try to focus on in these classes I teach is that, most people have never heard of the 21-year-old hacker that was behind the Marani Senpai botnet that was a Rutgers student,
Yeah.
21 years old, living in New Jersey,
Right.
Fanwood, New Jersey, and him and his cohorts created the most proficient denial of service attack in history. And
Yeah.
when we view it from the commercialized aspect of the dark web, the guys in the hoods running the terminal screens,
Yeah.
massive running the lines of code like as fast as their fingers can type, that really creates this stigma for law enforcement that doesn't know what's going on. When they see something like that, they're like, oh, these people are super hacking criminals. Their wealth of knowledge is far beyond what I could ever understand. And in return, for me to investigate these types of cases is futile. And
Yeah.
that's the wrong logic.
Totally. And I think, again, it's the dissemination of information. It's like, how can we take it? How can we expose it? How do we shine a light on it? And how do we make it easier for people to understand it? How do we take the wealth of data the collective, putting together and just get it out there for more individuals to understand it more effectively and some action plan? What the hell can they do about it? And I think that's, for me, when you're talking about it dealing with the law enforcement, that's huge because they are on the front line, big time.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And I think it's time that in for the law enforcement community as a whole, the fastest growing crime in the world, and I would challenge someone to argue with this is cybercrime. It's trillions of dollars lost globally, and
Mhm.
that's a fair estimate. And when we break it down, okay, so what have we done on the law enforcement front, here in the United States with our state, local partners, tribal territory partners? Like what have we, the law enforcement community, done to actively address this? Are we having these trainings readily available? Are we having a dedicated cyber officer within our department, somebody that has this skill set that's able to understand these types of crimes as they come in? And I mean, unfortunately, I feel that we're behind the curve as comparative to some other countries that are
Yeah.
really getting on the forefront of it. Here in the United States, we're kind of behind the curve on it. And there's more of a discussion that could happen on that end. Is the training available? How expensive is the training? So on and so forth. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, while we have those conversations, the problem gets worse. So
That's a big part of it. And I think the other part of the other issue as well, and I've come out of some of the European areas, shall we say. I do a lot with some of the stuff folks in the UK and a couple of other countries, Israel as well, actually, and a few of the other countries. And I think part of it is the territorial size is different, the scale is
mhm,
different. And I would argue it's one country, which is one you hit the Met Police and you're like, hey, and you get to cover the entire country. The challenge
Yeah.
over here, and I love this. I mean, good grief, I've been in this country 20 something odd years. It's not one country, it's 50 bloody countries, and each one of them's got its own flipping flag waving way it wants to do things. And trying to collaborate and cooperate across all of those can be a challenge. I've seen it work. It's working slowly but surely with like the National Guard folks, because we're seeing a huge amount of interaction with those folks now, where it's really Cyber Shield, Cyber Yankee, especially up and down the entire East Coast, is really fostering a lot of collaboration between the teams. So it can happen, but it's to your point, it takes a while. And meanwhile, every single minute of the damn day, somebody somewhere's getting scammed, and it sucks.
Mhm. Yeah. And from a victim standpoint too, when you call the police, you have this scam that
Yeah,
took place. And just think of it this way, you have an officer that's came on the job maybe in the late 90s, right? Probably didn't have a cell phone when they first wore the
yeah,
uniform, got sworn in. Now they're getting a call from a Generation Zer, right? Like maybe someone who just turned 20 who's explaining that he was scammed out of $50,000 from a non fungible token scam, has
yeah,
the whole case put together and goes to this officer and like, hey, listen, I have this, here it all is, here. And I guarantee you, more often than not, the officer's probably going to respond, there's nothing we could do. Like, well, I don't understand this. And because I don't understand this, I don't know what I can do from my end. And that's the wrong logic to have. You could take the
right,
report, the agencies that are out there, specifically the Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, HSI, FBI, they're aptly available, assist or take the reins of the case when you forward it to them. But the main thing that has to happen is that report has to be taken. When you
yeah,
approach the logic too, oh, that's why IC3.gov exists. Oh, don't tell us. You do the report on IC3.gov. I don't think that there's actually a data set out there to compare it to, but more often than not, if a police officer responds and says, we can't handle this, you can go there and you do it. I guarantee you that victim's not going to go to IC3.gov. And it's a shame because that happens a lot more often than not.
well, and you then start get to a point as well, whereas if law enforcement is engaged somewhere else or they see something, that individual is now potentially getting themselves into a world of hurt themselves by digging into it. We ran into this a bunch years and years ago because you've got a history in dealing with children at risk. And a
Yes.
lot of us have done a lot of that work as well over the years. And, I'll plug the civilian side, which is the Innocent Lives Foundation folks as well for some of that. They have, and working with you and other teams, have got a very well laid out way of doing things. But the vigilante approach, although maybe it exposes somebody, taints all of the evidence, screws everything up. And unfortunately, that individual, especially if they're handling any of that material themselves, now puts themselves in the firing line. So we've got to get out of the vigilante side. We've got to get out of the go off yourself and do it. That I don't like the hackback mentality that seems to be growing more and more. So it's we from a law enforcement, from a government, from an alphabet soup agency stuff have got to do a better job of somehow coordinating this and getting all of the intelligence together so that we can effectively do it.
Yeah. And a testament, my site has only really been live for since I want to say since October of 2021. That's the only
Yeah.
time it's been live. And a lot of the times I get emails, like people don't actually report through the portal like I have it set up. They just send me the emails of,
Right.
hey, and it's probably somebody that's beefing with somebody else, but they want to send me everything through the email to be like, hey, this guy's a bad guy. I know who he is. He's dealing these drugs on these dark net markets. And they'll send me the email, or I'll get something that the person goes, hey, this really isn't a dark web drug aspect, but this guy is selling PII. I'll get that stuff coming to my site. And, I appreciate it because I do vet the information myself. I try to find these guys, I try to find their presence, and I send it off immediately to federal partners. But just to have that avenue there versus the vigilante aspect, the hackback aspect, like to me, that I could say that that's something that is a testament to the success of the site, the necessity for a site like that to exist. And we've only been online for like 4 months.
We'll
Dude,
make sure that as part of the podcast, we put the site out there. Definitely. That's got to make sure that's one of the artifacts that gets added to
yeah.
the stuff that we put out, please. Yeah. So let's, I mean, again, let's stripping away the mystery and the mystere. I'm interested from where you are seeing any kind of trending, any analytics. Again, it used to be years ago, you'd go out to the sites, you'd pick up credit cards, you'd pick up information, PII data, and various other stuff. Are you seeing that trend continue? Because I mean, I know from our standpoint, again, pulling up the intelligence from the cyber skill folks, some of the, I mean, the price of just getting a card keeps going down and down because more of the stupid
Yeah.
things exist. And I'm kind of intrigued what ebbs and flows you're seeing when it comes to information and intelligence being sold.
So I'm seeing more off market stuff. I'm seeing more
Mm,
Telegram, more of the XMPP chats. I'm seeing more people kind of migrating from the darknet markets as we knew them, or the unindexed deep websites, Club to
yeah,
Card. Everyone knows about Brian's Club, it's been around forever. And it really took off more after Joker's stash went down. So I feel like it's become such a convoluted, super saturated market, specifically when we're talking about carding or we're talking about PII. And I'm seeing more of a migration from the traditional darknet markets, the traditional sites, to these Telegram channels, where not only are these people posting stuff for sale, wanting to do direct deals, but they're also being braggarts. Like, they're openly showing their bank account statements. Like, this is how much I have in my account. Like right now, like putting stuff out there that eventually could be used to figure out who they are,
yeah,
when you start to build up this information about these people. But it's also one of those things where they just don't care. They're not afraid of law enforcement. They're not afraid to get caught because
mhm,
they know that as a collective whole, law enforcement is behind the curve. And we're, unfortunately, when I say we, I don't mean like my specific department or myself, but as law enforcement as a whole, we always play catch up to the next thing.
yeah,
And that was, that was probably evident with the ransomware as a service as it took off, with
yeah,
COVID, right? Everyone started working from home. The market for compromised remote desktop protocol that skyrocketed because everyone's using RDP now. So we see, as society changes and, albeit COVID augmented our lifestyle as it is now, we see the adverse effects of it on these dark net markets. We see how much has changed, how much is now available for sale. And even with ransomware as a service, when we talk about the hooded figures and the terminal screens, you or I, we can make a good amount of money if we worked for a company, a Fortune 500 company, as an insider, to just
yeah,
infect the network, that we could make it look like we did it by accident. Oh, I clicked the wrong link. So I got to go through
mm,
my security PowerPoint again. But
yeah,
it's out there, and I don't know if the numbers exist currently for 2021, but I would fancy to say that just with the volatility of cryptocurrency alone last year, how high Bitcoin got, I would say last year was probably the biggest loss ever in the world with cybercrime once those statistics come out.
I've seen some out there, and then it is horrendous. I mean, it's
Yeah.
absolutely mind-boggling on this one. Yeah, it really, really is. When we take a look at that kind of stuff, we see where we're at. We see the craziness of what's happening. I'm interested. I mean, I know how I go about doing my research on this. I know from a tactical standpoint and a procedural standpoint and that stuff. I'm interested from you on what you can share and what you teach on where some is on how. I mean, how do you take the information? How are you gathering it? How are you finding it? Because this isn't all easily Googleable information. So I'm intrigued from your side on like we know what the problem is. How the heck do we look at what we can do about? How do we gather intelligence? And then what the heck are we going to do about it?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I believe it's training that's got to be available to law enforcement. It has, we have to collectively break this stigma that it's like a dark arts or, some secret sauce that a very select few are able to appropriately execute. That's not the case. And when we have these local police departments, these state police departments that show an interest in it, that want to have the training available, that want to send their officers to this training so they get a baseline, a fundamental understanding. And for me, that's coming from a local municipal police department myself. My familiarity with the dark web came from working the cases while I was with the federal agency. I was there in 2014 on cases that have become archetypes for how, or case examples that have really become archetypes for how dark web is investigated. So being able to translate that into something local police departments, state police departments, tribal police departments can understand. Their main job is to be reporting this. Like, we're not going to expect you to go online. We're not going to expect you to infiltrate some Russian speaking forums. We're not going to expect you, we're not
Yeah.
going to expect that from local police departments or from the rank and file. But what you can do is you could take that report and you could take that report and either upload it to ic3.gov yourself, or
Yeah.
you could find who the local agency that oversees the area, your local Secret Service office, your local Department of Homeland Security, FBI office, and forward them that. Now, granted, not every case is going to warrant the full force of the United States government, but for that information to be there, be readily available, because who's to say that that grandmother that got scammed out of $54,000 because she believed her grandson was arrested in Aruba and needed to send Bitcoin, because that's
Yeah.
all the Aruba police accept now is Bitcoin. So she had to send the Bitcoin to them. Who is to say that that group that did that isn't responsible for more financial losses?
Right.
And there's always this mythical threshold that has to be met for the United States government to get involved. I don't agree with that. I believe, proactively, let's go after these guys. Let's work in tandem with the local PDs, the state PDs. Let's go after them in tandem. And you know what? If it is the scammer in another country, forward it to that country. That's why Interpol exists, right? That's why the National Crime Bureaus that,
Yeah.
yeah, why they're in these countries, forward it to them, because 9 out of 10 times they're also breaking the law in their country.
Right.
So it's like, especially with the swatting, like swatting cases, in my opinion, are very easy. They're very easy to investigate. A lot of the time, these guys are broadcasting their swatting on Discord. They're doing it
Yes.
with a bunch of people in the room. They're
Yeah.
doing it either via Skype or they're doing it via text now. They're
Text,
all
text.
collectively, yeah, and they're all collectively laughing as the local PDs are responding lights and sirens to some poor soul's house because they got mad about a game of Roblox, or they got mad.
Yeah.
Like, it boggles my mind. But then when it happens, heaven forbid somebody gets hurt. Never want that to happen. But when stuff like that happens, we just chalk it up, and we again, the collective, we chalk it up as an annoyance. Oh, no, another swatted call. But like, dude, those cases aren't that hard to investigate. And if these people are in Canada or these people are in the UK somewhere, forward that information off to your federal partners and let it go to the National Criminal Agency or let it go to the RCMP, because these
Yeah.
guys are breaking the law in their country too.
Prosecute as long as you got the information, you can turn it into
Yeah,
intelligence. You can hand off an intel packet and say, "There's the address. All you got to do is go knock on door."
exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
I think that's where I think it gets interesting. Is I mean, there are definitely certain areas, and swatting is probably one of the biggest ones. Is it's easier because typically you're using known cellular systems, you're using known inbound calls and stuff. You've got the ability to trace a lot of the recording architecture. You got voice, and to your point, you typically got a very open communication protocol that's being used. Doesn't take that much to do it at that point. Again, but it takes people knowing what to do, what to look for, the steps to follow, and where to send it to actually get something done about it.
Yeah, and you would honestly be surprised how many people believe that Google Voice or a readily available voice over IP service is untraceable. If you were to go to, and I'm not saying it as a, I'm smarter than you aspect. I'm not. I'm saying it from a purely like, this is a symptom of the problem aspect.
Mhm.
If I were to go and say like, hey, this Google Voice number here, that, this Google Voice number was the one that was part of a fraud scheme involving these elderly people. They
Yeah,
were calling, claiming to be this, that, and the other thing. You'd be surprised how many of us in law enforcement would respond like, "Whoa, wait, you could trace Google Voice? You could
right.
you could get attribution to it?" That's not the problem. That's a symptom of the problem. And the
Yeah.
problem is, the lack of training, the fundamental misunderstandings that we have about the dark web and cybercrime in general.
I think it's to that point, it's really interesting. I think this is part of the ethos for why we're trying to do what we're doing, which is partly demystifying it. But these kinds of conversations are gold because you take that next step. It's all very well having the intelligence. Yeah, great. I've got intelligence on something. You need to know what to do about it. And it's no different than anything else in information security and technology. It's, I don't just want to know the shit's broken. I want a couple of next steps. Help me understand how I can solve it. Give me options for how to deal with it. Give me a couple of ways I can actually help move this along. And I think that's the same thing with what we're doing here, which is I don't just, I know what the problem is. I can gather the information, I can pull in the intelligence, but it's doing something with it. It's actually actionable intelligence and being able to,
Yeah.
and that I think is one of the biggest things where I look at where intelligence has got to take that next step. You've given me it. What are my options? I need good options.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll agree that the systems that we currently have in place, whether that's through the CISA reporting or whether
Hmm.
that's through IC3.gov, those are great. Those are phenomenal portals for just the general public or law enforcement to go to it. But from a standpoint of law enforcement, the local PDs that are, or the state PDs that are responding to calls like this, they also need
Yeah.
to have the wherewithal to take that report, to treat it like it is a real crime. You know, like when people think of cybercrime, they think of often victimless, right? Like when somebody's
Yeah.
credit card information gets stolen and the credit card gets used in something, the security protocols that are in place currently, more often than not, that transaction is going to get flagged, whether on the e-commerce end, they see some anomalies in the IP, the location, something like that. That's going to get flagged. The card holder is going to get notified, and the card holder is probably going to cancel that card. You're going to get a new card in the mail. Everybody's none the wiser, right? The
Yeah.
viewpoint that unless the victim actually had, and this is a true story because I have seen this from my teaching to state, local, tribal law enforcement. They sometimes view it that unless that victim actually had that credit card physically stolen from them, they won't take the report. They'll be
Yeah.
like, well, this isn't something that's our purview. And that's not, and they're not doing anything wrong. It's not like they're supposed to take that report and they're doing it wrong because, you know, I just don't want to do the work. It's because they honestly believe that there's nothing that can come from doing this report.
That's a key one. This has been my one gripe. So if I take off the one foot in the government side and I put on my civilian side of it, one of the biggest gripes I've seen is, and it's directed unfortunately against one of the three-letter agencies, is we feed information in and nothing comes back.
Mm.
So why do I bother feeding any more information in?
Mm.
Once in a blue moon, we get a woohoo, we've knocked the door down on frickin' Pirate Bay again. And it puts up another one. Yay. People get disillusioned. People are like, why do I keep putting these reports in? Why do I keep reporting? Or I'll go deal with something else that I can see a result in. And I think there's an element of that in there as well. I know there's an element of that in there as well. People, I think, are willing to do something about it if they see a result or if they see that their one piece of that jigsaw helped somebody in Estonia get the door kicked in and dragged out by the collar.
Yeah.
That I think is somehow we've also got to tie that in. And again, I think that comes back to, the information, the intelligence, and then the real world side of it going, hey, look, grandma, thank you. Dear local PD, thank you. You gave me a piece of the jigsaw that meant that we could go actually take action on somebody in a different country. We got a
Yeah.
prosecution out of it.
Yeah. I would agree with that 100 times over. The old ways of even you yourself seeing how it works sometimes with these alphabet agencies, right? The old ways
Yeah.
of, being very closed off, right? Being like, I'll gladly take what you have to give me, but hey, we're better than you. Like just
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that. And it
Doesn't
create and it
work.
does it. The adage that I use is why do we have these perceptions that we do? And I think of Die Hard, right? The Nakatomi Towers, it was under control. Then
Yeah.
Agents Johnson and Johnson came in and everything got messed up, right? But it really, that's really where like these perceptions come from. When it's a constant theme in pop culture, when it's a constant theme in the movies, it's like, why are we surprised when we have this breakdown where the local or state don't want to work with the federal government. And in return, the federal government shouldn't be like, well, you have to work with us, but we're not going to play nice. And it, if anything, I could attest to with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the amount of amazing cases that have come out from that. And that's a harmonious working environment with the local PDs, state PDs, and the federal government. That has been phenomenal, and I think that even with the collective underworld as we know it, a lot of them don't like the child pornography as well. They like to keep that
Correct. Yeah.
away, because they know once that's the spotlight of that is on them, even if they're not involved with it, if they're just loaning server space, they know that the hammer's gonna fall and the hammer's gonna fall really hard on them. So
Real
it's
hard.
like we
Yeah.
have this, yeah, we have this one aspect where there's a unilateral effort, like internationally too, there's this unilateral effort to spearhead this, and I think we have been very successful. Companies like Thorn, right, the private sector that proactively go after it online too. There's been this success, and then I go, well, why can't that transcend to the dark web drugs? Why can't that transcend to these carders, these fraudsters? Like we can do it. It's possible. We just really want to have to do it.
Yeah, and I think a big chunk, some of it, the carders especially, the drugs is a different one, I think, as well. But the carders, really good friend, Ryan Cloutier says we're analog humans in a digital world. Because kids are kids and we can see the effect, it actually affects us back in the human world very, very drastically.
Mm,
We can see that, and therefore there's a level of empathy and there's a level of reality to it. Whereas exactly to your point earlier, the credit card that gets stolen, another one gets issued. There's no real, yes, it's an inconvenience. I get a PIN number every single year because somebody somewhere lost my freaking identity. So every year the federal government sends me a nice little PIN and I pipe it in when I send my taxes in. And other things that I have to do, freaking OPM for crying out loud. So all of that stuff, there are repercussions, but they're not as drastic as the ragtag ragamuffin kid that's in front of you that you've just managed to get away from some shit show they're having to deal with. And I wonder if it's because there's not that connection. Now, the drugs is an interesting one because there is that connection. You got a body for crying out loud because of something that happened. I don't know. That's a tough one.
I would say that the enticement for easy money, you can be 18 years
Mm,
old. You know what? You could be 18 years old, maybe just graduated high school. And if you're in with the right frauding group, you could be making 5,000, 6,000, $10,000 a week just with frauding,
yeah.
just with carding, right? Getting stolen credit card information
Yeah.
and quickly buying gift cards with it. And then either selling those gift cards or, buying merchandise with those gift cards and then reselling that merchandise. You can make a lot of money very quick, and the perception from the local level, the PDs on the local level is, these are complicated cases. How do we work these cases? So not only do you have this enticement that you're going to make easy money, but it's also like you're probably not going to get caught, right? You're probably not
But
going to get
yeah.
caught, and from like you said, a digital world, right? Now all the AI that exists on these card processing payment platforms online, it's actually becoming harder to use stolen credit card information online. So you're seeing them
Yeah.
go back to point of sale transactions. You're seeing them doing stuff that's over the counter again because they know that they'll probably get away with it over the counter. They'll get away with it if they go with a stolen credit card to their local Dollar General or one of these stores that sell net spend that's linked with Western Union or sell these
Yeah.
rechargeable cards, they're going to easily change that money. They're going to wash that money. It's these whole individual racketeering organizations, and it's out there on Snapchat. They're advertising it on Snapchat. Like, hey, if you have Santander Bank, hit me up. If you have TD Bank, we can make 5K together in a week. It's all out there underneath the noses of the local PD. It's just they just don't have the understanding of what's going on, and they don't feel empowered that they can actually investigate these cases. So you're seeing this adverse effect. I mean, with dark web drugs, right? You have this perception that it's safer to order drugs on the dark web than to go to the street corner. I've been on these interviews and I've talked to these people that were recipients, right? Because that's how the federal government can build cases. We pick off who's buying, take over their
Yep.
accounts, continue to buy, so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
you'd be surprised that there's this perception that, it's safer, maybe physically, like you're not going to get robbed, right? I mean, you might lose
Right.
some money if you get scammed, but you're not going to like get robbed or shot if you order those drugs online. When in reality, in terms of quality control, in terms of the actual narcotics that you are going to be ingesting, there's no difference than what you're buying on the street corner than what you're getting on the dark web. And more often than not, we see the dealers that are dealing on the street corner are sourcing from the dark web. It's really in my eyes, as it exists today, since 2013, which I feel is like year zero for what we know as the dark web, with
Mm.
the publicity that the Silk Road
Yeah.
got with Ross Ulbricht. Like since 2013, the amount of younger generations that are very versed in how to buy drugs online. They're very versed in how to hide themselves, specifically either with proxies or VPNs. You have this disconnect where they've gotten smarter, they've gotten more abreast to it, and law enforcement has still been stuck in 2013.
This has been an interesting conversation, and I think I wouldn't mind having another one with you at some point in time if you don't mind. I'd probably do another one of these if you don't mind, more of a geek style one, and have a
Go on.
conversation, especially about the sites that you have. I want to hit that definitely. I want to be respectful of the time we have now. So, final thoughts, if you don't mind, like just general thoughts, final thoughts. I'm stirring the pot over
Mhm.
how to help local law enforcement. I'm kicking some kind of fun ideas around. We might have to have a conversation offline, but I'd love some final thoughts if you don't mind, and then we will pick this one up again.
I would say, a law enforcement standpoint, we in law enforcement need to do better. We need to be better at the understandings of how crimes are being committed, how the dark web works in general, the different dark nets that are out there. You'd be surprised if I say, well, the onion router is not the dark web. There's Invisible Internet Project. There's
Yeah.
zero net. But you would be surprised,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
because they don't, there's this fundamental, misconceptions that they have. My passion is training. My passion is teaching. My passion is to see the success stories that come out from maybe the one law enforcement, the rank and file who listens to this podcast and actually goes, hey, you know what? I do know about those Snapchat messages that are going around the high school about making 5 grand a week with these
Yeah.
Carters. You know, just having this proactive approach, because you and I both know it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. We saw last year in our country, the highest amount of overdoses that we've ever had. And what we collectively know is the opioid epidemic, that was 2013.
Hmm.
Purdue Pharma, those guys are out. It's like this is all now illegally sourced narcotics, and a lot of it is coming from the dark web. And we need to have an understanding of just how much law enforcement can do on the state and local level versus the federal level. Like, obviously, a lot of these cases are up here on the federal level, but
Hmm.
down here, this is the foundation. This is the base of the pyramid. We got to be really proactively going after it.
Yeah. I think you and I, if you don't mind, in fact, we'll get Danny that will collaborate behind the scenes. I'd love to do a part two on this one and actually kind of dig into it. But we might drag Ryan in on this conversation as well, because Ryan's doing a lot with Fed and stuff. Yeah. Don't be surprised if we come back and we do it, a couple of us on this one. I think there are some ways that we can help. No two ways about it, from information, from intelligence, and just generally helping to get the word out there.
If we had half the approach that there is, rightly so, for child pornography on online, whether that's the dark web
Yeah.
or, if we had half of that, like we have with Thorn, with
Yeah.
the all the
IMF
other
and
nonprofits, as well as, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, if we had half that effort going after the narcotics and the fraud being vended online, the dark web as we know it wouldn't be as profitable as it is right now.
yeah, let's keep that conversation going. I like that. I'm not gonna, yeah, there's some things we can do to help on that one as well. All right.
Great.
I do want to be respectful of time, definitely. Kevin, it has been an absolute pleasure and honor. Again, do me a quick favor. Give me the two sites that you're running that people can go for information, please.
Absolutely. So it's the Ubivis Project, Ubivis project.org. And you can go to stopdarkwebdrugs.com, all one word. It'll resolve back to the same site where you can report as anonymously as you want to be. We don't retain IP addresses. We don't require digital signatures. Or in law enforcement, all we really ask for is a case number and contact information for you and the moniker name if you know it. And that's all we need to really get the ball rolling on our end.
Cool. Keven, absolute pleasure. We will continue this conversation another time. Thank you very, very much. Danny, as always, thank you for sorting this out and organizing the heck out of this. See you on the dark side. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Dr. Dark Web. This show is brought to you by Cyber6Girl, the threat intelligence company. If you would like to learn more, please feel free to follow or subscribe to Dr. Dark Web on your favorite podcast streamer. Or, as an alternative, you can always find us online at cyber6girl.com/podcast. You'll find all the latest episodes, goodies, nuggets of information, background, and probably some stickers or two. See you in the dark.